Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and you are listening to the Columbine Conspiracy Series, the most comprehensive and exhausting series on the Columbine event. One of the most tragic and media covered events, one of the most narrative changing events as it unfolded in the media over time. This is episode 18, Foreknowledge. A lot of coincidence theorists hallucinate that Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold must have acted alone. And not only that, but they must not have told anybody else. There's a lot of goofs out there. That's why this series exists, because it's painfully obvious to anybody who has even watched the original news footage that more than two perpetrators were reported by over 100 witnesses. Again, if you haven't checked out the previous 17 episodes, check them out. And believe it or not, I haven't even gotten to some of the most mind-shocking material. I haven't even gotten to it. That's how deep and critical this case is. Possibly more so than any other school event, we shall call it. The censors are in full swing here. I'm actually, they're not even letting me put up graphics on live streams anymore. This one's been painfully glitchy. And I might do when I do a re-air of this episode as a premiere, I should be able to work in more graphics because then it won't be a live stream. But ever since I did the occult patches of NASA top secret missions, this channel appears to have been targeted. But anyway, today we will examine how much evidence exists for other individuals, including adults in the community, not part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, that knew that this would happen. I'll say that again. How many adults, not part of the Trenchcoat Mafia, not even connected to any of these individuals, that made definitive statements that this event was actually going to happen prior to it happening, prior, during, and after. I mean, this is going to really cause mass triggering for the coincidence theorists, and of course I will reference each and every publicly available document from every single Columbine report that has since been released. Keep in mind, there's tens of thousands of documents that have been sealed. Now, what has already been publicly released that anybody can verify in these documentation, all of these documents are publicly available. And I cite each and every one for all of this material. The most obvious point are the over 100 witnesses who have definitively stated in their own handwriting that who they saw shooting was not Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. Now, a large percentage of these individuals actually knew both Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold, and other individuals like Robert Perry. So they specifically knew all these individuals, so they could clearly tell them apart. And they claimed that the shooter they saw was not Harris or Klebold. Over 100 accounts. But all these coincidence theorist goofs who weren't there and who didn't personally know these individuals somehow know better. And the most damning thing, the absolute most damning thing is that their handwritten statements do not match the typewritten statements by government agents who interviewed them. That's pretty telling, is it not? that they were bullying and coercing. They were telling the witnesses, these poor victims of the shooting who were actually there, they were telling them what they saw, as if the agents knew better. And the other thing that's kind of, I don't want to say hilarious because it's such a tragic event, but the level of goofery we're dealing with coincidence theorists, is only the witnesses who saw anyone other than Harrison Klebold could have been mistaken. There is no fog of war. There's just no chance of being mistaken for anybody who identified Harris or Klebold. They couldn't have been mistaken. All the mistakes only could have happened for people identifying anyone other than Harris and Klebold. I mean, that's the level of goofery we're dealing with when it comes to coincidence theorists and conspiracy reality deniers here. And again, some of the major smoking guns here are going to be individuals not connected to the students or even the high school who made statements demonstrating foreknowledge. And I think this might be very, very critical in establishing that this was some kind of covert op to some degree, possibly overlapping MK Ultra connections and otherwise. As always, if you enjoy the Mindshock podcast, find it interesting and informative, want to help logic and reason return to a world where it's quickly going extinct, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patreon is you get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcaster requests. You can also be a guest in the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. If you are with us live, leave them in the chat. I'll try to get to everybody. You can also support the channel by becoming a YouTube subscriber right here on YouTube as a member. Okay. So we will see if this stream also gets shut down because, again, glitches in full swing here. So we got Lord Zed in the chat, the Ant1747, Les Xylophone, stating Robin Anderson, Nate Dykman, and Morris New. What about Brooks Brown? Are we going to forget about Brooks Brown? I'm actually going to unveil an account I don't believe I've gone over before, which is quite damning from an individual that we have not gone over before. All the best to the Ant1747 regarding to family members with illnesses. All the best there. Elaine Lowell in the chat. This is one I didn't go too deep into, so I look forward to new info. Yeah, I believe I'm going to reveal stuff that hasn't been revealed anywhere else, as always. That's par for the course. For the Mindshock podcast, of course. So, if anybody has any questions thus far regarding foreknowledge or otherwise, I could address those, and then I will dive into the documents. Everything here, we're using empirically verifiable information. There's no hearsay here. This is everything that can be verified in official government documents. So even the most clueless of coincidence theorist bootlickers can verify this all from those that they bootlick. So we can dive right in here. So, again, if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, there are some quite damning accounts from numerous individuals. So, some theories, which I've gone over, are that not only were there many different trenchcoat mafias at many different high schools, although the bulk of them do appear to be in Colorado. Several different Colorado high schools had trenchcoat mafias. Whereas in other states, it might have only been one or two schools in the entire area, but all of the schools within the Columbine area apparently had trenchcoat mafias. So there could have been some intentional obfuscation, as this could have been presented as some kind of senior prank. Now, Harrison Klebold did film video class movies with some kind of guns, supposedly fake guns, whatever, so a lot of students weren't even initially alarmed that morning because they thought they were just kind of filming something and they were walking around with guns. So until the shooting actually started, it appeared that there was no actual alarm at people in trench coats walking around with guns, which is curious also. But either way, there could have been some intentional obfuscation regarding some kind of a senior prank involving paintball guns and pipe bombs not intended to actually hurt anybody. And so the main thing is just going through the over 100 witness accounts of all these trenchcoat mafia members, many of which who don't even belong to Columbine, being in the area and wanting to participate. Now, were they wanting to simply participate in some kind of a prank and not actually hurt anybody? And that's why they all bailed when they realized it was real and there was actually real shooting going on? Or did some of them know that it was going to be real shooting and wanted to participate and then bailed when it got too real? Because there's obviously a difference. And these are high school kids with, their brains aren't fully formed. What might seem like a good idea, especially if they're disturbed individuals. I mean, we're not just talking about regular high school. I mean, we're talking about disturbed high school kids with non-fully formed brains. So what they could have thought could have been a good idea, once it got real, I mean, that's a different story. How many of them liked the idea of death and destruction? And how many of them would actually want to directly participate when it was actually going on around them? So that second category obviously would be a lot less individuals. Okay, so let's just do a quick recap of what I've gone over before, and then I'll go into the new info. So Pat McDuffie, in his official statement, named several different Trenchcoat Mafia members and associates, including himself, with direct knowledge. So, again, if you haven't checked out the McDuffie account, I even have a clip of that on the channel if you don't want to listen to the full episodes. He names a lot of individuals, and then of course we have the Splatterpunks. And regarding the Splatterpunks, the guys that were arrested, I went over them in the previous episodes extensively because they also had prior arrests. Again, I'm not going to go over what I went over before. In this episode, I'm giving new information on those who had foreknowledge. But the Splatterpunks, these individuals were arrested. Apparently, they had varying stories, including coming to the high school to help their friends or something of that nature. But there's an even further report that we didn't go over, where they made a statement. One of them told a statement, told an individual at Clement Park. And this is document 7,462. Give me a second to bring it up. So sometimes the numbers get messed up, but I'll just double check that it is 7,400 and 62. So it starts on 7,462 and it continues through 64. So the quick recap on the 62 document is as follows. This is Chakotay's statement. Cork, his name is Cork Chakotay. So this is a 40-something-year-old man who was simply looking at what was going on here. Chakotay related the following. And again, this is the supplemental report, Littleton Fire Department, from the official documentation from Jefferson County. Chakotay related the following information. Tuesday, April 20th, 1999, he was in the area of Bowles and Wadsworth. He had parked near the area of the Centura Medical Plaza building located at 8246 West Bowles Avenue. He observed three males park and exit a vehicle in the parking lot. The three males were wearing black military attire. The males stopped and talked with him. The males commented something to the effect of they were in the area to help their friends at the school. Let me repeat that again in quotations. They were in the area to help their friends at the school, end quote. The comments were made during the shooting at Columbine High. Chakotay commented the time was before or right around the noon hour. So you know what else is kind of weird? Why are they randomly, like, what do we know about Chakotay? Why are they randomly talking to this random 40-plus-year-old man about them coming to the scene to assist friends in military gear? And notice one of them is wearing suspenders. There was actually another individual caught on the security cafeteria footage with suspenders as well. Lord Zed said, I heard a kid who was killed in a nearby hill, something like Devil's Peak or something in Satanic Ritual a few months before Columbine. Now I haven't found much. I went over that on the previous episode. Or the one before that. And within the previous 2-3 episodes, I actually went over the different cults in the area and their connection to even Rampart Range, where they all shot guns. Okay, anyway, I think it's... Does anybody find it weird that these guys showing up in military gear... Now, these guys are connected to other incidents, including bomb making. Again, I went over this on the previous episode, specifically the high schools that these splatterpunks were actually attending, and one of them was actually previously arrested as well. But anyway, does anybody find it weird they're randomly stopping to tell a 40-plus-year-old man that they're at the school to help their friends? Now, now call me crazy, but if you're one of these guys, why would you randomly stop and talk to this 40-plus-year-old man? Again, I couldn't find it much on Chakotay. But is it possible he's one of these adults that's connected to teenagers in the area? There seems to be a lot of cult activity and the like in that area. Usually ringleaders are these older guys, and then they're the ringleaders of all these teens. So, there were actually several witnesses. I might even do a follow-up episode just on the Splatterpunks, because the Splatterpunk saga, something just seems off there. But there were actually several individuals who saw the Splatterpunks hours prior. So that includes Ken Greenwald, document 7487, Nancy Lindsay, document 976, Sally Hawker, document 7510, and there's plenty of others who saw individuals matching their descriptions that, again, I went over on the 100 plus witness accounts that do not match the official narrative. Wow, Lord Zed, I haven't heard that theory before. Lord Zed in the chat with one of the most mind-shocking theories that I have, surprisingly, I've never even heard it postulated. Lord Zed stated, could it be possible Eric and Dylan went to stop an attack? Now that I'm not quite sure of, but it's a theory I'm willing to entertain. I mean, I haven't seen anything to back that up, but once again, simply a theory that I've never even seen postulated, and I've done quite some research on this case. Yes, the Ant1747 says, I still can't get over the last video with all those other planned attacks on other schools nearby with the Trenchcoat Mafia associations. Like, what is going on during that time period? Damn. Yet, not only in that area, all over the U.S., and there was even a couple in Canada, in Canada. And I only went over what there was definitive reference to. There's actually plenty more. I mean, there's just so much more. It's so mind-shocking. I mean, there's dozens of others that I didn't even put in the video simply because I couldn't find definitive information. Because everything I put in the previous video is all sourced in the official documentation or official news reports from mainstream news stations at the time. So even the most gullible of goof, bootlick, and coincidence theorists, I mean, these are the official sources that they bootlick. So there's just so much to the Splatterpunk accounts. So this is Nolte, Accard, and Brunetti, and there's even another individual, and they actually went on the Sally Jesse Raphael show, April 30th, 99, and I mentioned that as well. And actually, something we didn't even go over, so, I mean, I guess I'll do a dedicated episode on the Splatterpunks. Columbine student Brian Anderson called in KOA radio April 21st, 99 at 10:30 a.m. and stated that the 3 males apprehended in the park were involved in delivering pipe bombs. Huh. So he said this to the radio, but yet in his interview with investigators, document 17,864, he stated that they dress completely different than the Trenchcoat Mafia. I mean, they look kind of consistent. So again, is this a case of investigators got to him and coerced him to change his story? What's curious is that Nolte and Brunetti took a polygraph test, and that was a condition of appearing on the Sally Jesse Raphael show. Investigators requested the poly records, and it stated that Nolte gave truthful responses except for when he asked if he had ever visited Harris or Klebold's websites. And again, MK Ultra individuals and or sociopaths can obviously fool a poly. Also, what's actually kind of curious is that the man who administered the polygraph to Brunetti actually gave way more leeway. Both Nolte and Brunetti were given way more leeway than on a normal poly. So they were allowed to be more nervous, etc. Particularly on the question of direct involvement. So that's curious. I'm not going to go deeper into the polygraphs and everything. I'll probably have to do a dedicated episode on the Splatterpunks. I'm just recapping that, again, this Chakotay individual, which we didn't even get to the exact statement that I brought all this up to get to, which appears on document 7464. This is so weird because Chakotay, um, my bad, actually, it's 60, is it 64 and 65? So this is document 7,464 and 65. I'll read the whole report here from the Arvada Police Department document. April 28, 99, investigator Dwayne Eaton of the Arvada Police Department was assigned leads for info sheets 1506 in 2008. Lead sheet control 1506 listed the source of the info as Cork Chakotay. This guy's name is Cork Chakotay. I wonder if his friends call him Corky. So the lead sheet advised that Chakotay had talked to 3 males in Clement Park approximately 5 minutes before they were arrested. This would have been following the homicides of Columbine High. April 30th, 99, investigator Chakotay was able to make telephone contact with Chakotay. Chakotay advised that on Tuesday, April 20th, 99, he was in the area of a series of medical buildings located on the east side of Wadsworth and south of Bowles Avenue. He advised that these buildings backed up to Clement Park. Chakotay advised the job he was on in this area was at the medical building number 2. Chakotay advised that shortly before responding to this location, he had been in his office nearby and heard about the incident at Columbine High. Chakotay advised that this info in mind, he walked into the park area and walked up to on the top of a mound of dirt with his binoculars in an attempt to see any activity taking place at or near Columbine High. Now, is that normal activity? So he works, there's some kind of a job at a medical building? Is this construction? What kind of job is this? How many guys have binocs at the ready at any time? I mean, I don't know. This almost sounds like this guy's possibly some kind of an agent himself. I mean, this guy's account is weird. How many random guys have binoculars at the ready at any time? So, Chakotay advised that while standing on top of the mound of dirt, 3 males approached him and began speaking with him. So that's kind of weird, too. So they're there to help their friends at the school, but they're just going to stop and talk to this random guy first before going to help their friends when time is of the essence? I don't know about this account. I don't know. He advised the males had... See, is he an agent and they're touching base... Like, is he their handler and they're touching base with him? And this is all the cover story because he knew that other people saw them talk to him. Because would that explain this whole thing? He advised the males had parked behind an Einstein bagel shop and he had first noticed them exiting their vehicle because of the clothing they were wearing. He advised their clothing was military in appearance. Chakotay advised he could not recall specifically what the 3 males were wearing that only reminded him of military gear. Chakotay advised investigator Eaton that as the 3 subjects walked up to the mound of dirt near him, he acknowledged their presence and said hello. Chakotay advised the 3 males told him they had come to the area in an attempt to see what was going on at Columbine. He advised they told that they were going to take a walk over towards the school. Chakotay advised the 3 males also told him that they had friends over at the school and wanted to help them. Chakotay advised he asked the 3 if their friends at the schools were students. Chakotay advised the 3 males then told him, quote, yeah, they go to school there, end quote. Chakotay advised he asked the 3 males why they weren't in school and if they were also students at Columbine. Chakotay advised the males told him they were all students at Wheat Ridge High School and not Columbine High School. Chakotay advised the subject he described as tall with bad teeth told him that he used to go to Columbine. Chakotay advised that the 3 males told him that they communicate with their friends often and knew something bad was going to happen at Columbine High School. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists once again. We are on document 7,465 in the official documentation. Quote from the document. Chakotay advised the 3 males told him they communicate with their friends often and knew that something bad was going to happen at Columbine High School. Let me say that again, this time for the Dunning-Kruger crowd. They communicate with their friends often and knew that something bad was going to happen at Columbine High School. Chakotay advised he made a comment to the three about how terrible it was what was taking place at the high school. Chakotay stated that the subject, who he described as being short, quiet, and wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses, said, quote, "Yeah, but they're getting even," end quote. So I wonder if this is all damage control after the fact to control a narrative, and they actually never said that. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities here. This is Mindshock. I don't claim anything is true or untrue. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. If he's their handler, and when the narrative switched to it was just Harrison Klebold, perhaps he made this up about this whole getting even with bullies thing after the narrative changed. But who knows? I'm just going over every single possible theory, mutually exclusive as well. Chakotay advised he had talked with the three males for approximately 3 minutes. He advised he began to realize that when talking about their friends, the three males might have in fact been discussing the shooters instead of the victims at Columbine High. Chakotay advised he then began to ask the three more detailed questions about their purpose for being in the area, and they began to back off on their statements to him. He advised the three, then wandered off into Clement Park towards Columbine High School. Chakotay advised he did not notice any weapons or anything else suspicious about the males except for their statements. All three subjects deny, moving to document 7466, all three subjects deny making any statements to any persons that they were friends of the suspects and were on their way to Columbine to help the suspects. Brunetti did admit to making contact with Chakotay, but not making those exact statements. Mostly just asking about what they could see, what was going on, etc. So those are curious comments. Very, very curious comments. And this, of course, is the tip of the iceberg. This is just our review here going into this. I didn't even get to the Mindshock and stuff yet. So, I don't know if we went over this particular reference here. Again, there's so many thousands of documents that have been released. I mean, it's kind of difficult to get through every single one of them. But let's not forget, about Robin Anderson. So this is Dylan Klebold's prom date, a friend of theirs. A lot does not add up about Robin Anderson. She's the one that purchased some of the weapons from former employees of Department of Defense with high clearances. I went over this in previous episodes. So, yeah. There's an interesting document here, which I don't think we went over. This is Tyler Ben Pierce's testimony, document 7001. I hope everybody's sitting down for this. I don't think I went over this before. So, this witness Tyler Benjamin Pierce by phone. Tyler said 4/20/99, approximately at 7:30, he arrived at Columbine High for his scheduled classes for the day. Tyler said his first class on 4/20 was a video productions class, upper level of Columbine High. Tyler said one of his classmates in this video productions class was Eric Harris. Tyler said on 4/20, Harris was present in this class. Tyler said he could not remember anything unusual in the way Eric Harris acted or talked on 4/20/99. Here's the other thing, too. If they weren't MK Ultra, like, how difficult would it be for these teen kids to not betray any kind of an emotion while they're about to do this? Now, if they're 100% sociopaths, maybe. But again, from the transcripts and all these documents, there were videos of, again, the unreleased basement tapes where Eric Harris is crying in his car, etc. I don't know if people are making the claim that these were 100% sociopaths, in which case, wouldn't they have emotional betrayals and have been nervous in some capacity to carry this out? Or if they're MK Ultra and they have split personalities, then they wouldn't be. Tyler said Eric Harris seemed normal and said Eric Harris was on time for the beginning of this class as far as she could remember. He could remember. Tyler Pierce said he went to his scheduled classes until lunch period at 11:10. When lunch period began, he left Columbine for lunch. He did not advise of any suspicious people he could remember seeing upon leaving the school. Tyler Pierce said he had known Eric Harris since they were in 7th grade. Tyler said Eric Harris was a normal person to the best of his knowledge. He said Eric Harris previously played on sports teams. Tyler said Eric Harris also dressed normal and said he did not believe that Eric Harris began wearing a trench coat until approximately 2 years prior to the shooting. Actually, I don't know. I think I might have actually gone over this account, possibly, in the early episodes. There's one particular piece of info I want, but I guess I'll go over this real quick. Tyler Pierce said approximately 1 or 2 weeks prior to the shooting, Eric Harris made a video in their video productions class with Dylan Klebold. Tyler described the video that Eric Harris and Dylan made as being weird and said it was animated. Tyler said the video was about graveyards and skulls. Tyler said the Trenchcoat Mafia students would stay to themselves. He said he would see them gather in the cafeteria commons area of Columbine High, either at a table on the west side of the cafeteria near the windows, or on a bench underneath the stairway that leads from the upper level of Columbine High to the lower level and into the cafeteria commons area. Tyler said that Brian Sargent seemed to be friends with the Trenchcoat Mafia students, and particularly with Klebold and Harris. Tyler said he knew who Brian Sargent was because Sargent got into a physical fight last year with Isaiah Scholes. Tyler said that Isaiah is a friend of his and that Scholes won this fight, and that may be the reason why Isaiah Scholes was shot in the library. I asked Tyler Pierce about anybody racially harassing or racially intimidating Isaiah. Tyler said he never saw anybody do either one to Isaiah Scholes and said, in fact, everybody loved Isaiah. Tyler said he did not ever witness any of the other minority students at Columbine be racially harassed or intimidated either. Tyler said he never saw anybody harass the Trenchcoat Mafia students and said the reports that he had seen in the media of the Trenchcoat Mafia students being harassed were false. Tyler said he did not see the Trenchcoat Mafia students harass anybody either. I asked Tyler if he had any knowledge of anybody else being involved in the shooting. Tyler said that he knew Robin Anderson was good friends of Eric and Dylan, and he said he could not see any way that Robin Anderson could have not known what was going on. Let me repeat that again for the coincidence theorists. Tyler said that he knew Robert Anderson was good friends of Eric and Dylan and said he could not see any way that Robert Anderson could have not known what was going on. And again, from the accounts involving Robert Anderson, apparently she did not want to go back to the school and she was very nervous that lunch hour. Yeah, Lord Zed, there were some issues with Isaiah's family. Lord Zed in the chat says Isaiah's uncle or something got his head blown off right after Columbine in a drive-by shooting. He was making an album about how it was all BS or something, I forget. Yeah, I don't know if I've done a deep dive on the Scholes family, but again, so from this statement here, he also said he knew Brooks Brown was friends with Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, or were previously friends with him. Tyler said he does not know of anybody, nor has he heard of any rumors of anybody maybe manufacturing explosive devices and or processing or selling firearms. Okay, so again, he believed Robin Anderson. There's no way Robin Anderson could have not known what was going on. And Robin Anderson was also in her statement, one of the most redacted statements, over a paragraph redacted, where she mentions that Chris Morris went to some kind of national meeting for the Trenchcoat Mafia. I'll just go through a few quick accounts here. Document 2178, Brooks Skinner was approached by a girl who said they planned to do it and she knew about it for a year. This was possibly Alejandra Marsh, which we went over as well. Justin and Jerry Alber heard Alex Marsh saying that they had been planning it since December. They both got the impression that she knew it was going to happen. While running away, Heidi Wildona said that she was helped over a wall by a girl who said the suspects told her about the shooting as she was leaving. This is document 4726. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? Courtney Van Dell. Apparently, Brandy Maloneson and Jonathan Fries heard Courtney say something was going to happen at launch. So this was prior to it happening. Documents 3,634, 3,049, and 4,573. So multiple individuals heard this. Melissa Souter. Nicole Ray says Souter had 2 weeks of foreknowledge. This is document 4,144. Kristen Griffith says Melissa told her friend Danny Romero that she had 2 weeks of foreknowledge. 6,457. So we have multiple individuals here corroborating this plethora of other individuals who had knowledge. John Raffel's friend was told by Pauline Colby that the Trenchcoat Mafia were going to get back at everyone real soon. Document 7,056. Tina Bernacci says Colby took off 10 minutes before the shooting. And we went over Pauline Colby and a lot of these Trenchcoat Mafia associates earlier. But it's just curious for all the coincidence theorists who think that nobody knew, or maximum 1 or 2 people knew. I mean, we're getting into a dozen individuals here with multiple corroborations from multiple witnesses. Regarding Lydie Perry, Jolie Gallagher, document 5,424, quote, heard Lydie say that a friend had called her the night before and told her to stay away from the school on the 20th because something big was going to happen. That was document 5,424. Trenchcoat Mafia associate who wore a black scarf to school on 420, not even taking it off for PE. This is Rebecca Hines. Crystal Bragazzi says, quote, she had never seen Hines wear a black scarf like that before, end quote, 5,225. That's not smoking gun for me, but make of that what you will. So then we have Zach Heckler. For those that don't know, Heckler was a close associate of these individuals. Let me bring up an image to further clarify this. If YouTube will allow, again, bear with me with the YouTube censorship and strange types of shadow banning here. So, of the individuals here in the class photo, there are several individuals here making these gun gestures toward the camera. So this is Zach Heckler right here. So this is Robin Anderson, this is Brooks Brown, and this is Zach Heckler here, which nobody really talks about Zach Heckler. I did a pretty extensive deep dive into Heckler before. Now here is yet another individual here who is named specifically. This is document 4435. Sarah Slater says that Heckler knew that Harris and Klebold had the day planned, but didn't think they would carry it out. So this isn't some kind of a vague claim. This type of vague claim that, oh yeah, they were planning something to get hack people. Sarah Slater is explicitly stating here that Heckler told her that they had this specific date planned. I wonder what the coincidence theorists make of that one. Few more documents to go over here, 6,526 and 9,622. Numerous witnesses told the Trenchcoat Mafia were not around the school before the shooting broke out. Jennifer Harmon stated, quote, "Not one of them showed up to nothing, not one of them." Also, she heard through other students that 420 was important and something big was going to happen. Okay, now we're going to get to a more damning account here. This is pretty crazy stuff here. I don't believe I went over this account before. We are going to go into the testimony of Junior Ryan Schwader. And again, I do not believe I've gone over this account before. I do not have it in the record. So apparently, Ryan Schwader stated that he saw a Trenchcoat Mafia member carrying a duffel bag that morning and was told not to be in school that afternoon. Document 7,129. Now that's a curious statement. That's definitely curious, is it not? Let's go over his account. 7,129. Background: Danette Muselman's best friend's boyfriend, Ryan Schwader, reportedly contacted a Trenchcoat Mafia individual carrying a large duffel bag into school. Reportedly was told not to be in school in the afternoon. This info was secondhand from her friend Deanna Schaffer. Now here's what's curious too, is after all of these investigators are basically coercing these students. Because again, we have their handwritten statements. In the previous episodes, I actually put the documents on the screen where you can see what the handwritten statement was. And then the subsequent document of the investigator changing what was said and typing up a report that does not match what the witness actually stated in their own handwriting. The Ant1747 says in the chat, it's like, at least for me, I would have liked to see what happened to the Springfield 3 as much as I would have liked to have been at Columbine to really see all of this curious and tragic. In the next few episodes, I will be doing an episode on all of the security cameras that existed at Columbine, because apparently there is footage of what transpired. There was a library hallway camera, and there was also an administrative camera in the administrative offices. And there were also several cameras overlooking the parking lots. None of this footage has ever been released. And of course, it's coincidental that they were switching the tape out in the cafeteria when the shooting broke out. So, a lot of coincidences and oddities regarding the security footage. They could obviously release all of it to show that there weren't additional footage, despite additional shooters, despite all of the eye and ear witnesses of simultaneous gunfire in the library and the administrative area and the cafeteria at several intervals. So that's very curious, and even the auditorium, I believe. So let's go over this document here. The interview is that Ryan Schwader saw someone carrying a large duffel into the school and told him, "Don't be in school this afternoon." Schwader was interviewed at his residence, 10:30 a.m., May 18th, 1999. Present during the interview was Susan Schwader, his mother. Schwader was at Columbine High, April 20th, 1999. During fourth hour, he was in a language arts class located in the area of the building south of the main entrance. He described the room as sort of in the middle of the building. Upon leaving the classroom at 11:10, when the bell rang, Schwader went to the area by the cafeteria known as the Commons, where he met up with his girlfriend, Deanna Schaffer, who was a freshman. She was inside the building. Just outside that area, they met with Matthew Hauk, also a freshman who was going with them to lunch. The three went to Schwader's car, a silver Jeep Grand Cherokee, that was parked in the far corner of the south lot. Schwader believes his assigned parking space is number 197. That's curious that he doesn't remember for sure. But anyway, Schwader recalled that it took about a minute or two to get out of class, meet up with his friends, go to the car. They departed the parking lot and drove south on Pierce Street en route to the McDonald's restaurant located on Columbine Road, just east of Pierce. Schwader did not recall seeing Brooks Brown during this time period. Now, what's also interesting about this account is how the one and only Brooks Brown will factor into all of this. So let's bear that in mind. Schwader believes there was music playing in the Jeep as they were leaving the school because he said he usually has his music on in his car when he was driving. He said he thought they were talking as well, so the music was probably turned down. He believed the windows were up. Schwader recalled that Schaffer was in the passenger seat in the front and Hauk was in the back seat. He was not sure if Hauk was sitting directly behind Schaffer on the passenger side of the car or if he was sitting in the center of the back seat. When they got to the McDonald's, there was no line, perhaps one car ahead of them in the drive-up line. They got their food, drove back out onto Columbine Road. Before they turned onto Pierce Street, an ambulance passed them. They turned north onto Pierce and drove as far as Walker Avenue, where there was an ambulance and fire truck blocking the street. They turned onto Walker Avenue and went into the neighborhood west of Pierce. Walker Avenue curves around toward the south where it bends to the right and continues westbound, and the name changes to Hoover Ave. There's a stop sign on Hoover and Peakview Ave. They stopped behind several other cars, and Schwader saw Brooks Brown standing in the middle of Hoover Street. Schwader took me to the neighborhood and showed me where they discovered Brooks Brown. He said Brooks' eyes were really wide open and that he looked scared or confused. Schwader started to roll down his window to call Brooks to come over to the Jeep when Brown saw them and ran over the Jeep. Brown put his green backpack into the rear of the Jeep, which Schwader referred to as the trunk, but which is actually an open area behind the back seat. Brown then got into the left rear passenger seat of the Jeep. Brown directed Schwader to turn right on a Peakview Ave and directed him through the neighborhood to a cul-de-sac on the south side of Clement Park where they were able to see Columbine High. Brown got out of the car and tried to see if he could see anything. It's kind of curious, too, how Brooks Brown apparently just knows exactly where to see what when. I mean, they're all students there. Like, it's just kind of weird. It's almost like he knew which streets were blocked and which weren't also, which is kind of curious. If that's true. Again, I'm not claiming that is true or untrue. It's just Brooks Brown is just one curious individual. I went over him extensively on previous podcasts, including his history with Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Schwader wasn't sure, but he believes it was about then that Brown told them about the shooting. In any event, he said this occurred within a minute or two after they picked him up. So this is kind of weird. So Brown looks scared and confused. So does he not know what's going on here? Then they drive him to this somehow Brooks Brown knows where to go where the roads aren't closed to get a clear view of the high school, and he doesn't tell them about the shooting until they get to that area. So he spends a minute or two with them in the car without saying anything. That's a little weird. Schwader said he wasn't sure though, but okay. Brown was described as talking fast. Schwader said you can tell from the way he was talking and acting something was really wrong. Brown told them that he thought he heard shots after he left the school and that he thought Harris was involved. Brown described that he was outside and Harris walked by him and told him to leave. Then Brown said, "Oh man, I think he had a duffel bag with him." Schwader recalls Brown did not say he had seen Harris with a gun, but he said he heard something that sounded like gunshots. Brown did not tell Schwader where he was when he heard the shots. Schwader recalls that Brown told them that his parents, Brooks Brown's parents, had told the police about Harris. According to Schwader, Brown used Schwader's cellular telephone to call his father, then to call the sheriff's office. Now, you know what's kind of weird, though? Like, why? I mean, I guess the theory is if he called his dad before the police, it would be to tell his father that he was no longer at the location and that he was safe. Otherwise, why not just call the police first? I don't know. I went over that a little bit in the Brown episode. Schwader thinks Brown called directory assistance to get the number for the sheriff's office. Wait, why not just call 911? Wait, what? Does anybody remember? Wait, what? There was some kind of comedy skit or something where it was like they called the operator, like, what's the number for 911? What's going on here? He said he thought the operator then connected Brown with the Arvada Police Department. Brown was advising authorities that he believed Harris was involved in the shooting. It would also be curious. I mean, yeah. Actually, I'm not going to get into Brown here. Schwader does not recall Brown saying anything about Klebold during that time. Schwader said Klebold was enrolled in his third-hour video class, but Klebold was not in that class that day. Schwader had no other classes with Klebold and had no classes with Harris. In retrospect, Schwader said he thought they might have even passed Klebold as they were leaving the parking lot at the school. But when I asked him if this was because of timing or if he had actually seen Klebold, Schwader confirmed it was because of the timing of the events. I asked if he had seen Harris, but he said he had not. See, this is kind of weird. That doesn't make sense to me. So, because of timing, he could have seen Klebold, but not Harris? What? Does that make sense to anybody? Why would he randomly think he saw Klebold as they were leaving? Although there were other sightings of Klebold outside of the school. Again, I went over those on the eyewitness accounts episodes. Following the stop at the south end of Clement Park, they drove back into the neighborhood a bit to be away from possible bullets, which is where Brown's father met them. By that time, the battery on the cell phone was beginning to run down, so Schwader let Brown sit in the driver's seat of the Jeep so he could talk to the sheriff's office, since the battery cord was not long enough to reach the back seat. After Brown's father arrived, they followed him to Brown's house. Since he was already in the driver's seat, Brown drove Schwader's vehicle and Schwader sat in the back seat. Schwader doesn't. Is that a little weird to anybody? The vehicles of high school boys are quite sacred. I mean, I guess if it was an emergency situation and Brown's father was there and they were all freaked out and he was just like, just follow me real quick. I mean, I don't know. Schwader does not recall discussing Klebold with Brown until the next day. He said they were talking about it over coffee, and based on the fact that the second suspect was described as having longer blonde hair, they thought it must be Klebold since he matched the description and was known as Harris's friend. Before we departed Schwader's residence to go to the neighborhood where he picked up Brown, Mrs. Schwader commented that Brown's backpack was still in Schwader's Jeep. Wait a second. Wait a second. This is May 18th. Okay, so he left his backpack in that vehicle for a month? Huh. I asked Mrs. Schwader if I could have the backpack and provided her with a receipt for it, written on a page from my notebook. Schwader and his mother took me to the car where the backpack was removed from the back of the Jeep. It was a green Crown Sport backpack with one broken shoulder strap buckle. The pack was open when it was given to me, and I observed that it contained papers and books. Mrs. Schwader told me that Brown had previously left some books and other items in Schwader's Jeep and that she had put some of those things in his pack. Otherwise, it was the same as when he left it in the Jeep. So she... Wow, that's interesting. So Mrs. Schwader contaminated that evidence. Other items of Brown's property had been in the Jeep prior to April 20th were left in the Jeep. How good of friends is... Okay, so I've been covering this case for quite some time. I actually don't even remember... I don't even remember Schwader being mentioned anywhere about anything. I just discovered this recently. So apparently, Brooks Brown and this Schwader guy are pretty good friends to the point where Brooks Brown routinely leaves stuff in Schwader's Jeep. And how did they know which items, because it says here, either items of Brown's property which had been in the Jeep prior to April 20th were left in the Jeep? How did they know which items were left in the Jeep prior to April 20th and which items were left in the Jeep on April 20th? Is anybody else having an issue here? Does anybody find any of this curious? This Schwader-Brooks connection and Schwader's mother manipulating... Like, why was she even in the Jeep? I mean, I don't know. Does anybody find issue with any of this? Is it just me? Or does basically nothing in any of the reports add up in any way? Subsequently, I booked the backpack into the evidence facility at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department under JCSD case number 99-7625 with property ID number 10,252. A copy of the property form is included with this report. The backpack was sealed into a plastic bag with my initials and the case number. So here's the thing. If there was anything damning regarding Brooks Brown, couldn't they have just said... I mean, Schwader's mother was the one directing which items were left. Which of Brooks Brown's items were left in Schwader's Jeep prior to the 20th? Like, who's stating which items were prior not to be booked? And the investigator here, the detective John Watson here, apparently just took their word for it? I mean, does this make sense to anybody? John Watson is listed as the investigator. So he just took... So, and how would Mrs. Schwader know what Brooks Brown left in her son's Jeep prior to the 20th versus on the 20th? And why would John Watson, the investigator here, take her word for it? Does anybody have any answers to these questions? Like, this is how they carry out this investigation? Also included here are the telephone records of the calls that Brooks Brown made. And apparently Schwader denied those statements at this time. And again, it's unclear whether this is because of pure coercion from the investigators rewriting the narrative, or because these kids were just too scared to confirm what they actually did say, because it would open up way more questions on how they knew this, how they knew that. Or they might have been scared of the other Trenchcoat Mafia members, because for those that don't recall, in the earlier episodes, there were several individuals who did not return to school at all when the Columbine students returned to Chatsworth. I believe that was the high school where they finished out their classes afterwards. And several students did not return because they said they didn't want to go to school with those who murdered their classmates, obviously referring to the unarrested additional shooters. So that could also be a reason why a lot of these kids never spoke out after the fact. Although some of them did, and again, I went over all those accounts. The ones that were brave enough to continue telling at least what they believed to be the truth. So this Ryan Schwader guy, I mean, really interesting. So not only did he allegedly claim that a Trenchcoat Mafia member was carrying a duffel bag that morning and told him not to be in school that afternoon, but he also picked up Brooks Brown, who somehow knew where to go to avoid all the roadblocks, and used his cell phone. Very interesting. I mean, I think follow-ups with Schwader would have been necessary. Let's continue here. Document 3138. Brittany Gillette said that, quote, during her second period jewelry class, she and James Helms were talking about senior prank day and how unpleasant it would be. Another student heard them discussing this, and he said, quote, that is nothing to what is going to happen. That's a curious statement to make. That's document 3138. 3138. This other student, let's see if they were ever identified. They just jump in and say, that's nothing like what's going to happen. Some redacteds here as well. So here it's stated, during her second period jewelry class, she and James Helms were talking about senior prank day, how unpleasant it would be. It doesn't state the student. Another student heard them discussing this, and he said, quote, that is nothing compared to what is going to happen, end quote. She did not know the name of this boy, but did know that he is a junior, often wears black pants, a t-shirt, and a vest, and has blonde hair. Curious, Brittany does use the internet and has a screen name of Britty. She had her remember back in the day where you could have a screen name like Britty, Britty, and it not having been taken, where you don't need all the extra numbers. Man, that's a long time ago. She heard that either Klebold or Harris may have had a screen name of Red. I'm assuming that's supposed to be Reb, and it's unclear whether this is a typo or just whatever, and may have entered a chat room that she was in 3 to 4 months ago. So the other thing that was never really kind of nailed down are all the different chat rooms that these kids went into, and she said she actually doesn't know Eric or Dylan, or she stated she didn't. This is Brittany Gillette. Her story is she went up to the lunch line with Marnie Mack, bought lunch, returned to their table. Brittany heard people gasping, and then she heard Mr. Sanders yelling for everyone to get down. Outside of the West cafeteria windows, she could see someone in a black trench coat moving around. Her and Marnie then got under their table. While under the table, she could hear shots, and she noticed the students began to stand up and run for the stairs. She did the same, but fell as she went up the stairs and had a difficult time getting up because of an injury she sustained from gymnastics. She lay on the stair landing and saw a male in a trench coat that she could not identify come through the door of the cafeteria. He was pointing the gun in her direction and randomly shooting. She was then helped up by an unidentified student, got onto the top of the stairs, and with the assistance of this student, ran down the math science wing hallway. At this point, she heard shots coming from near the library and looked back and heard an explosion from near the library. Anne saw smoke in this vicinity as well. As she was running down the hallway, she said that cement chips were flying, presumably from gunfire in her general direction. She exited the building to the east side, ran across Pierce into the park, and went to the home of Lindsay Blair. She did not know Harris or Klebold, nor did she see anyone resembling them on Monday or Tuesday. So the shooter that she saw not only wasn't Harris or Klebold, but someone who looked nothing like them. Is everybody following Brittany Gillette's account here? Here's Johnny. I did not remove any comments in the chat. I usually don't, unless it's just some kind of crazy troll that's spamming. We got a lot of Dunning-Kruger groups that stop by, but we like to laugh at them, so I usually don't remove their comments. What does everybody make of Brittany Gillette's account? So she said she saw a guy with a gun who she did not recognize open fire randomly. She went up the stairs, was helped by another student, and she said she did not know Harris or Klebold, and she didn't see anyone resembling them on Monday or Tuesday. She has heard of the Trenchcoat Mafia, but did not know them or associate with any of them. She does believe, however, that two brothers named Nick and Brandon Schott, interesting last name, may hang out with the Trenchcoat Mafia. And she's also stating here, during her second period jewelry class, she and James Helms were talking about senior prank day and how unpleasant it would be. Another student heard them discussing this, and he said that, quote, "That is nothing compared to what is going to happen," end quote. She did not know the name of this boy, but did know that he is a junior, often wears black pants, a t-shirt and a vest, and has blonde hair. So out of there's four individuals here. There's the shooter, there's Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who she did not know them, and she did not see anybody resembling them. And then we have the fourth individual who made the comment, "That is nothing compared to what is going to happen." Furthermore, she's heard that Klebold and Harris may have had a screen name of the name Red, that might be a typo referring to Reb, and may have entered a chat room that she was in 3 to 4 months prior. So that is Brittany Gillette's account. Quite damning. Quite damning. Now, the follow-up interview here on May 25th is where she was shown photographs, and this is a typed-up report, so we have to take the investigator's word for it here. She positively ID'd Dylan Klebold as the gunman. Look at that damage control. And keep in mind, there were several parents who wouldn't even allow their kids to be interviewed because they were afraid they wouldn't be believed, and we went over that as well. So I wonder what level of coercion the investigators, were engaged in here, because from several of the students, they said that the investigators were not listening to them, and they were telling them that it was this shooter, and things would go easier if they just identified this particular shooter that they wanted them to identify. But Brittany Gillette's account, not to be forgotten here. We have another account here from Alexis Wolf in Clement Park. She stated she heard a girl say, quote, "I was told not to come to school because something big was going to happen," end quote. So how many, like, there's dozens of students here stating that there was something big that was gonna go down that day. There's also the document 2720, the alteration of the prom posters. You can check that out. I have that on. You can look up Columbine prom, and I went over all of the oddities associated with the prom. And we also went over Lauren Waterbury's statement. Lauren stated that while at a lacrosse meeting with Chatfield students, she noticed backpacks with CHS 4-20, CHS 13th Day, and Chatfield TCM on them. And we also went over the account from, this is, so Principal Frank DeAngelis. We went over quite a few oddities regarding DeAngelis before. D'Angelo. There's quite a few. So apparently, before the shooting, he was running up and down the interior cafeteria stairs. Furthermore, he heard a group of boys who talked of detonating something on April 20th. So this is document 5671. And this was in connection to Barb Larson, who was interviewed for a teaching position on April 19th. And she advised DeAngelis that she saw 5 tall kids wearing dusters, aka trench coats, and talking about detonating something, and when she walked by them, they said, "Shh," and then exited the building whooping and hollering. So this is the day before the shooting. Larson also described one person in the group as having white hair and black eyebrows. Curious. Very, very curious. And DeAngelis also... So DeAngelis recalled... Okay. So what's curious is that DeAngelis stated that his secretary, Susan White, may recall the incident. She stepped into the office and she said she did not recall seeing Larson and did not recall the incident where Mr. DeAngelis stepped out of his office to quiet the students that day. That's interesting. White also stated she may have left prior to Larson's arrival, so conveniently she didn't say anything. Interesting. So now we're going to document 5672, which is quite curious. Mr. DeAngelis stated that on the advice of his attorney, he was not free to discuss specific disciplinary matters involving any students of Columbine. However, Mr. DeAngelis shared the following information on students at CHS that were associated with Harris and Klebold, which is as follows: that he did not know Harris or Klebold personally, although he recognized them on site. He had a lot of contact with Chris Morris. He had a lot of contact with Eric Dutroux. He was also familiar with Joe Stair, who was associated with Morris and Dutroux last year. He knew Brooks Brown very well. He further advised that the Brown family had never talked to him about any threats made against Brooks Brown. He knew Brian Sargent by face only, had no other contact with him. He did not know Nate Dykeman or Robin Anderson at all. He did not know Alejandra Marsh. Although recently had the opportunity to meet her, stating that she is very vocal, blasting the administration, and a real bitter girl. That's an interesting thing to say. He has known Zach Heckler for the past 4 years and described him as a computer genius, stating that there may be some information of interest to this investigator regarding Heckler. That's curious. So he's stating Heckler's a computer genius. So this is the principal of the school here. That Heckler's a computer interest and might be of some interest to the investigator. Quite curious indeed. He did not personally know Robert Perry, although some people at school were upset with Perry because he associated with Harrison Klebold. Last year, he recalled that Morris, Stair, and Dutroux wore the black trench coats and black attire, though he does not recall seeing the black trench coats being worn by students this school year. What a liar. I mean, from all these accounts of students, there were plenty of students wearing black trench coats that year as well. Based on prior behavior, he felt that Redacted would be capable of something like this, although he had no knowledge that they were associated with Harrison Klebold. I wonder... Interesting. Who was you referring to there? Dutroux dropped out of school last year, hasn't seen him since, adding that he would not be allowed on campus. Well, other people didn't get the memo because there's plenty of students that supposedly weren't supposed to be on campus, including students that either graduated or dropped out years prior. So there was a rumor that DeAngelis was warned that an event was going to happen. So this is document 3894. So this is Angela Nelson's account. Document. It's actually it starts on 94, but it's document 3896 here. She said there is a rumor when asked if there was any additional information she had that would be relevant to the investigation. She said there was a rumor amongst the students that there have been numerous warnings sent to the principal that something was going to happen. I asked her if she could identify what the rumor was. She said it was something to the effect like, you are all going to die. I mean, that is ominous. So, not one warning, but multiple warnings. I mean, that's quite damning. And if this is true, would anybody expect the Angelus to actually admit this? Yeah, I got so many warnings that everybody's gonna die. I just didn't do anything about him. Like, what? I mean, it's kind of weird, the people that are expecting him to admit that, if it's true. I asked her if she could tell me who she had heard this from. She could not identify a specific person. Interesting. Very, very curious. So, a couple of other issues here that we did not go over. Mr. Mosier, the science teacher, told his students that they were expecting a fire drill. This is document 1864. I actually haven't heard this before. Was there a scheduled and expected fire drill that morning? Like, do they often schedule fire drills during lunch hours? I don't recall fire drills occurring during lunchtime. 1864. So this is witness D'Artheny Gustavo. Gustavo D'Artheny. So he said he arrived at the 5th hour class a little early, went in, was working on a project. He estimated that at approximately 11:35 a.m. or 11:40 a.m., he heard the fire alarms going off. Mr. Mosier told them that they had been expecting a fire drill and that they should just walk quietly out of the building. They began to walk out of the building when they saw students running and teachers yelling for them to get back into their classrooms. Huh. What's kind of weird though, is it possible Mr. Mosier just said that to calm them down? Because he really didn't know what was going on? But why would he tell them to walk calmly out of the building if he knew there was... Because then they were ushered back into the classrooms and told to lay down. Huh. And that doesn't make a lot of sense either. They also kept asking all these students about somebody with a pierced eyebrow, because this apparently was one of the shooters or suspects identified. He said he did not know anybody with a pierced eyebrow. But it's curious that the investigators had this list of questions to ask based on other eyewitness testimony. So apparently there was also a bomb found in a trash can the previous day on April 19th, possibly. This is document 2016. I don't know if we covered this. So this is witness Nathan Lopatin. He was in Mr. Cram's. Wow, what a, what a name for it. Just some of these names are just so outlandish. Are you gonna cram for Cram's final? Mr. Cram's fifth-hour chemistry class. At the time he heard the shooting start, Lopatin said that Mr. Cram was in front of the class lecturing when he heard a very loud pop like an explosion. Huh. Lopatin said that the class was told to run through the tech lab. He found his sister, who was in Mr. Manuela's class. They ran out the main hallway towards the front door of the schools. Lopatin said that he ran with his sister down the hallway by the counselor's offices and out the doors by the post-grad center. And again, there were security cameras. There's at least one camera in the administrative office area. That footage has never been released. Lopatin said that he ran by Smoker's Pit. Lopatin said they had to climb over the fence in the Smoker's Pit, ran to Clement Park. Lopatin said he had left his car keys, backpack, and other personal items inside of the chemistry classroom, but his sister had a key to his car with her. Okay. Huh. What's one of the most curious things to me, just psychologically here, from all these accounts? So the investigator here asked Lopatin if he ever saw who was shooting, and he said he never did see the shooters and had no idea how many people were involved. Lopatin said that about half of the students in his class got out while the others remained behind and hid in the physics lab with Mr. Manuelo. And just psychologically, that's something that like I can't stop thinking about just in researching this entire case. Like, if you were there, would you stay and hide in a classroom or would you run for it? Because it's just, I don't know. I mean, the whole incident is so tragic and psychologically traumatizing, but that's one of the things I just keep going back to and thinking about. How so many students just kind of ran and so many students stayed and hid. And of course, there's risk in both, because if you're running into gunfire, but if, on the other hand, you're staying and you're becoming a sitting duck target. So it's very tough. Wow, check this out. We certainly didn't cover this before. I asked Lopatin if he knew of the Trenchcoat Mafia or its members. He said that he had heard of the Trenchcoat Mafia before, but had no knowledge of who they were or really what they did. He said that the Trenchcoat Mafia members kept to themselves. Lopatin said that he did have a run-in with Eric Harris before. Lopatin said that Harris had been involved in a car accident where Harris had backed into Lopatin's car. This witness was in a car accident with Eric Harris. Lopatin said that when Harris backed into his car, Harris had become angry and started to shake and pound on his steering wheel. Lopatin said that the Trenchcoat Mafia was not as big as everyone thinks it is. He said that the members all wear trench coats but never really bothered anybody. I asked Lopatin if he had heard of anyone else that may have been involved in the incident at Columbine High School. Lopatin said that he heard through the rumor mill that Redacted may have been involved and was arrested. He said that he does not know the circumstances of the arrest, or even if Redacted was arrested in reference to the shooting. I don't know if this is Chris Morris that he is possibly referring to here. Lopatin said that he heard from a friend of his who he identified as Zachary Ingalls, that a special education student named Nathan, who the Columbine students call Black Hole because he is always saying Black Hole, that Nathan had seen bombs in the trash cans on Monday the 19th of April. Lopatin said that he believes the story is true because Zach Ingalls is his best friend and would not lie to him. Lopatin said he did not think he had any other info which was relevant to the shooting, and the interview was terminated. It's interesting terminology here. Terminating the interview? Could have just said ended. Okay. So, Okay, so let's not doubt Lopatin's best friend, Zach Ingalls. So this special ed student, Nathan, there's no last name here. Nathan, aka Black Hole. So this special ed student who apparently just says Black Hole all the time said that he had saw bombs in the trash cans Monday the 19th. He doesn't state when he said this. Did he say this prior to the shooting? Because if he saw those, well, when did he see them? In the morning? So they had all of the Monday afternoon to say this, and the morning before the shooting broke out. When was this claim by Nathan, the special ed student, made? Was it after the shooting or before? Because that would be very relevant information. There might also have been, give me a second to verify this. So there might have been one or more bomb threats called into the school that morning, which is curious. I don't know if we went over this before, because this is just another to add to the pile. Here's Johnny in the chat stating, I wonder if they will ever release everything they have, but the likelihood of that reality is highly doubtful. Only way would probably be if some hacker got lucky and made it public immediately. They might release everything. I mean, look at the JFK shooting. They still haven't released everything, but they're slowly releasing everything. When everybody, I mean, who knows? In another 50 years, they might release everything when it won't matter as much. Let's look at document 3469, Lacey Koch. She was in the serving line getting lunch. She sat her tray down on the table. A little kid ran by her, yelling that there was a guy with a gun. A little kid? Does that mean like a really short freshman? She stated no one took him serious. Wait, hold on a second. So there's some little kid, I don't know what that means. A little high school kid or a younger kid ran by her yelling that there was a guy with a gun. No one took him serious. Then she states Mr. Sanders and Kreitler then entered the cafeteria, yelled for everyone to get under tables. Kosh then heard 6 or 7 pops from outside. She thought they sounded different than gunshots, but not explosions. Then she heard louder shots in the cafeteria. She ran to the stairway which leads upstairs to the library and auditorium. She ran up the stairs, turned to the left, ran to the east exit of the school. Then she joined other students and teachers at Leawood Park on the east side of Pierce Street. During her time in the park, she overheard rumors that there had been a bomb threat earlier in the morning. Huh. She said a group of teachers were in the park near an ambulance. At one point, she thought Mr. Moore, a black teacher, was being shot at from somewhere. She said Mr. Moore appeared to be moving around to dodge fire. Wow, this is crazy. So they're in the park near an ambulance? She's saying, so not in the school. Near an ambulance? She thought that one of the teachers was being shot at and was moving around to dodge fire. Kosh did not see the suspects, could not provide any info on them. She only saw people falling down outside the cafeteria and stated she tripped on several people who were falling while running from the school. Was there ever any follow-up on this? Or with the teacher? Mr. Moore? I'm assuming no relation to Michael Moore. Weird. Very, very weird. Hmm. There's also another reference to a bomb threat, document 4630. Lauren Tochi. Lauren advised that she had heard no rumors about something happening on April 20th before that day. She said she was not aware of any rumors about bomb building. Lauren said that she had heard that the school received a bomb threat on Tuesday, April 20th morning, but she could provide no further info on what had happened. That's curious. So there's several references to bomb threats being called in that morning. Huh. I also wonder. I wonder if that was somebody in the know trying to warn everybody because they wanted everybody to evacuate the building so this wouldn't happen. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Believe it or not, we're just scratching the surface here. All right, so let's go to document 2467. Lauren Boyer. Let's look at her account. Once again, this is document 2467. In her own handwriting. Not great handwriting here. So she saw the two suspects at the school, but never talked to either. No large duffel bags were seen. She has seen some of the Gothics in the school, and they gather at the bottom of the stairs in the Commons. Some were there on Tuesday, April 20th, but she did not recall seeing either of the two suspects, referring to Eric and Dylan. Miss Bayer has heard that Sarah Scott's cousin, Rachel, was told by a trenchcoat mafia member to stay away from the school on Tuesday. Wait a second. Rachel Scott was told by a trenchcoat mafia member to stay away from the school on Tuesday. So that's new. That's new. Unless, I mean, so this is kind of crazy. So Sarah Scott's cousin, Rachel Scott, was told by a trenchcoat mafia member to stay away from school that day. I wonder if there was some kind of good guy, if there was a white hat within the trenchcoat mafia that told certain people not to go in and that called in the bomb threats to try to evacuate the building to make sure as few people as possible got hurt. Les Xylophone asking a question about Neil Gardner. I'm actually going to go over. Neil Gardner actually exchanged gunfire with Eric Harris. I don't know if a lot of people know that. We're going to actually go into Gardner and that incident, that alleged incident that's in all the documentation on a future episode. But here, this is the first I've heard. So this is Lauren Bayer, document 2467, stating that a trenchcoat mafia member warned Rachel Scott to stay away from school on April 20th. Now we have Carolyn Manning. So this is document 3502. She states that she did not see anything, but did hear gunshots. Lanning also states that she heard through her brother from an unknown source that students from Bear Creek High School knew this was going to happen. And again, for the coincidence theorist goofs who hallucinate, oh, well, there's no names and they're not standing by their statements. If you were one of these kids that made those statements, would you really go public with them and open yourself up to interrogation? Obviously, you wouldn't. I mean, the level of goofery, again, maybe it's just a rumor, maybe it's not true, but if it is true, is anybody actually expecting the people to come forward with that? Sarah Roseberry with a more innocuous account, document 4210, heard a rumor that seniors might be shooting paintballs at other students as it was senior prank day. So here's a very interesting interview, document 6550 by Jennifer Harmon, who I believe we have covered before. So Jennifer Harmon here, document 6550. So, investigator Schultz asks Harmon about Pat McDuffie. Harmon says, yeah, I can't remember his name. Did you actually see his face or no? Yep, he was talking about it, and then I saw Joe something. He was one of the founders on Channel 9 today. Joe who? I have clue. I think he's one of the dropouts. So I'm assuming she's talking about Joe Stair here because he was on TV. So he's not in school this year? I don't think so. Okay. He was a junior. What did he say on TV? He just said that he knew that all the police knew that they were doing bombs, pipe bombs. Everyone, there's a police officer that knew they were doing it. They all studied Hitler, but it didn't really go into the. Did you know that they were doing anything with bombs or anything before this happened? Who else besides Pat McDuffie and Joe did you see on TV? Okay, so before this, she's saying that they knew they were doing pipe bombs. And you know what else is kind of crazy? They never released the audio of any of these interviews. Because that would be very telling on the level of coercion here. She also mentions people hanging out with guys that look older. I went over Harmon before. You can actually look up her breakdown. So apparently there's a police officer that knew that they were doing pipe bombs and all that stuff, but apparently didn't stop them. She did not name the police officer, so that's also curious. Let's go over another account here. I'm not sure we went over this. This is Stephen Sumida, 7,229. Let's see who finds this interesting. And again, keep in mind, this is all what has been publicly released. I mean, we can only imagine what's in the thousands and thousands of unreleased documents. So here we have Stephen Sumida. Reporting Officer Peterson. On July 1st, 99, at about 12:45, I contacted witness Stephen Sumida by telephone. Sumida advised me that on April 20th he did not attend any of his classes at Columbine High due to the fact that, quote, Christ told me not to go to school that day, end quote. Stephen advised he was not sick on that day and that Christ was the only reason he stayed home on April 20th, 1999. Does anybody find that interesting? I would have also asked if there was any other day that Christ told him not to go to school. Because the other thing I don't think has been released were the attendance records. Because it appears that there's a lot of people didn't go to school that day. Why? And is it often that they didn't go to school that day? Let's look at the past 10 years. How many April 20, like what is the usual absence rate on a random Tuesday in April, and on specifically April 20th? What was the attendance rate of the past 10 years? And was 99 in line with the average? Or was it not? Alright, who's ready to get crazy? Believe it or not, nothing I just went over were any of the major bombshells. Who's still awake here? Who's still with us? Who's ready for the major bombshells? The Lord says he's born ready. I mean, this is why people come to Mindshock, because we're gonna blow some minds here. I mean, the coincidence theorists are gonna run for the hills right now, because this is just absolute insanity what we're about to go over. And by insanity, I don't mean untrue. So let's go to the FBI Columbine High School report. Anybody can access this. This is vault.fbi.gov/Columbine High School. This is part 1 of 4. There's a lot of redacteds here. You guys probably want this on the screen. Let me put a screenshot of this on the screen, because the coincidence theorists are just not going to believe this. I'm going to put it on the screen with the URL, so everybody can verify this for themselves. I've even gotten comments on the previous episodes, like goofs thinking the document numbers I gave were fake. Again, all of this is empirically verifiable in the official documentation. So again, it's time for the coincidence theorist cope here, because we're going to be dropping some major mind shocks here. According to this document, April 19th, so this is the night before. So we have a white female here of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the FBI even has her social security number. It's all redacted here, but contacted this FBI agent in reference to the listed matter. After being advised of the identity of the interviewing agent and the nature of the interview, she provided the following information. April 19th, 99, at approximately 10 p.m., Redacted was logged onto her internet server, America Online Redacted, believed that she was logged in under the screen name Redacted. Redacted entered a chat room under the name Redacted, which she often visits, called Bob Onyart Live. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole with this guy, but let's focus on Columbine here. Redacted describes this chat room as a conservative and right-wing. While in Bob Onyart Live, Redacted had an electronic conversation with 2 screen names. One of the screen names was Redacted, which is a screen name which Redacted recognized and has talked to previously. The second screen name was Redacted, which is not a familiar screen name to Redacted. During the course of the conversation, Redacted made statements to the effect that something bad was going to happen in Colorado or North Carolina on April 20th, 99. Redacted further made reference to the Holocaust, Adolf Hitler's birthday, and a fire. Toward the end of the conversation, Redacted stated to Redacted, "Keep your eyes open." On April 20th, 99, approximately 10 p.m., Redacted logged onto AOL and entered the chat room, Bob Onyart Live. Once again, Redacted was in the room and was referring to him or herself as the mole, and that he or she had to go back under. Redacted frequently visits the chat room Bob Onyart Live, and Redacted believed that Redacted is a 17-year-old boy, possibly from Colorado. So this, again, I'll make it a little bigger. It's all an official FBI documentation. Official FBI documentation. So clearly, all of this was being discussed. And again, for those that don't know and haven't watched the previous episodes, there were dozens and dozens of shootings planned that exact morning. All over the United States. I'm going to put a map on the screen from the previous episode so that those who haven't seen them can understand the extent of all these documented events. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of events here. One of the most damning documents is 18,154. Brianna Koss overheard conversation in class where Jordana Spaven was telling other students that she knows everyone involved at Columbine, and there is much more to come. This is definitely not over. Every 13 days, they will hit another school. Chatfield is next, then Dakota Ridge. And I have on the screen right now all of the areas where there were planned attacks, including the day before in Georgia on April 19th. And then also the 20th, there were many events on the 20th and many events within a week or two of the 20th. So that was just quick reference there. You can go back and watch the previous episodes. I go extensive into each and every one of these events with empirically verifiable documentation. Okay, so what does everybody make of this FBI report? So the night before at 10 p.m., there's already the warning. Now, another curiosity from this FBI file is a reference to an unknown passenger. This is page 79. On an unknown passenger on a Minnesota-bound train on April 15th, 1999. So apparently, it doesn't say bound from where. Minnesota bound from which area, it doesn't say. So an individual noticed an unknown male in the smoking car who was wearing a trench coat and who spoke German. She heard him say to no one in particular, quote, "Something big is going to happen," end quote. I mean, that's kind of generic, but the thing that's weird is this is a German-speaking trench coat-wearing individual. See, if they weren't German-speaking and wearing a trench coat, then, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. That's literally nothing. But the coincidence stack gets a little higher when it's just a few days prior. So people as far as Minnesota knew this was going to happen? So there's a column, it's not listed here, but there's apparently some kind of Columbine series, documentary series, episode 23 20. So, wait, let me see if I can find a clip here. Yeah, I don't know what this is in reference to. I'm gonna bring this clip on. But this is a huge mind shock if this is true, so I hope everybody's buckled in here. Because I have never heard this story before. And like I said, I've been researching for quite some time. Just give me a second to get this clip up. So I don't know, again, I don't know exactly what this is in reference to. But let's see what is said here in this clip.
They shot the kid down the stairs, sent another round, and only got him, I guess, up 4 times. I'm not sure exactly the order. And then got me once, and then I had to get up and run.
Michael Johnson talks about a day he will never forget, recounting a scene of disbelief and fear as he and his friends ate lunch. At first he thought it was a paintball prank.
So I went like this, and I looked at my hands, and there was blood, and it's like, this isn't paintball.
Well, I wanted him to be okay, but I just knew that he wasn't.
I didn't really have an overwhelmed feeling that there was anything drastically wrong. I was quite comforted.
Mike says the student gunmen were only 25 feet away when a bullet ripped through his left leg. He ran to a shed, only to find more wounds.
I realized I had been shot in the face.
Mike would have bled to death right there, but an athletics coach found him, notified police, and moments later, he was undergoing life-saving surgery.
It's almost like I was seeing a part of death. There was pure comfort. The one thing I was worried about was, if I die, how's my family going to feel?
I think it's not a matter of afraid of having him die. It's afraid of missing him for now.
Mike does have some special things he still needs to do, and I know that he was blessed to be here to accomplish those things.
For Mike and his family, life has become very fragile. Every day now includes the phrase, "I love you." His first visit back to Columbine High was a healing moment for both him and his family.
I saw it on TV and all that stuff, but to really see it, it's incredible.
So I couldn't find the full episode here. I don't know if this is from this particular documentary or otherwise, but I have a footnote here that Johnson and his mother have subsequently heard that a janitor at Dutch Creek Elementary had encountered Eric Harris in the elementary school on April 19th, and that Harris had told him to watch the news tomorrow. What? Okay. So, who's ready for more insanity? So this guy's name is Michael Johnson. I don't know if there's a different Michael Johnson. I mean, it's a very popular name. Or if it's this Michael Johnson. But either way, Johnson and his mother have since, this is the footnote I have, they heard that a janitor at Dutch Creek Elementary encountered Eric Harris at the elementary school the day before, and Harris told him to watch the news tomorrow. Now, if that account is true, what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, wow. And it gets crazier. Johnson's mother was told by Georgine Payne that on April 20th, during the incident, she was at King Soopers and observed several female students on a pay telephone and overheard one of them say that they hoped they did not wreck their plans since they had been working on it for so long. That's a little vague. Because if there was no reference to anything specific, but there were several female students, it's not stated how they were dressed. Were they dressed like goth, trenchcoat mafia? Because if so, then that's a little bit more damning. What's also kind of weird is that the Promised Land TV show had an episode that was supposed to air involving a shooting in front of a Denver school, which is a little curious. And then, of course, we went over this before, all of the crisis drills that happened in the week prior. There were special training sessions on crisis management. And then, of course, we went over the account of Mr. Strange, interesting last name, the Clement Park worker, where there might have been an undercover FBI agent next to him, and then he said he saw black-clad students whip out guns and start firing at the front of the school. And we went over that prior as well. We also have an ex-Columbine High School Trenchcoat Mafia member, Jennifer Falbo, document 17,475, knows the shooters and knew that the shooting was going to happen. Document 17,487, Ryan Shattuck told another student, quote, that something was about to occur. He knew about shooting and bomb at school. Document 18,192, Jeffrey Chevalier, an alt-ed school student, told the principal on April 19th that there will be, quote, a lot of funerals tomorrow, end quote. I mean, is this one of the warnings given to the principal? This is document 18,192. Okay, so apparently this was not a Columbine. This is a principal at an alternative school. There was a witness left voicemail that a student of hers told her on Monday, April 19th, that there will be a lot of funerals tomorrow. I mean, do the coincidence theorists just write this all off as coincidence? I mean, this is kind of crazy. I mean, we're moving into we're way over 2-digit accounts on foreknowledge. Document 18,501. Michael Zorate, a Chatfield student, overheard a conversations about guns in the basement needed for a shootout at Columbine at a local funplex on April 15th, 1999, and this was not Harris or Klebold. The person was wearing elaborate makeup. He did name somebody. The name has been redacted. This is document 18,501. So someone other than Harrison Klebold was talking about guns in the basement needed for a shootout at Columbine on April 15th, 1999. Another curiosity here, document 18,553. A report from St. Clair City, Missouri. A 15-year-old, there's no name here, a 15-year-old who arrived in St. Clair City, Missouri from Fountain, Colorado, made threats against his new school and knew about the planned school shooting at a Colorado school 2 weeks before April 20th. Once again, this is document 18,553. That's curious. Anybody else think that's curious? Document 19,592. Krista Hanley further told Josh Barnes that she spoke to Harris on April 19th, and Harris told her what he was planning to do tomorrow. Document 20,132. TJ Anthony Mark Pagliote Jr. told his parents and stayed home from school the day of the shooting. So we have another individual who didn't go to school that day and also told his parents about there being some kind of an event, and that's why he wasn't going. That's curious. We also have a Jason Scott Valentine, document 20,135, told their parents and stayed home from school the day of the shooting. Wow, it's quite a few people staying home that day, aren't there? Nate Dykman obviously went over Dykman 20,313. He said he knew they were going to do something, but didn't know they were going to do what they did. Document 20,953. Melissa Chavez had prior knowledge of incident, said at least 6 others are involved in planning the attack. Document 24,633. Linda Wharton, Clement Park employee. Apparently, Strange and another park employee told their coworker Linda Wharton had info about the shooting before it happened. That's curious. What's also kind of curious is that there was an MTV show called Warning Signs about violence and its effect on young people. It was supposed to air April 22nd, 1999. Obviously, it was scheduled many months in advance. It was produced by MTV with the Justice Department and the National Endowment for the Arts. And then there was also the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode, which I went over in previous episodes. It's called Earshot. It's season 4, episode 19. Season 4, episode 19. I went over Melissa Souter before as well. Might as well go over her account or accounts regarding her. Just to keep this exhaustive and comprehensive. So with Souter, this is Jason Bear's account, document 1759. When I first started working at the pretzel maker, I thought Trenchcoat Mafia associate Melissa Souter had some problems. She seemed slow and she was weird. She hung out with some guys in trench coats and that don't go to our school. She talked to Shannon about knowing that Eric and Dylan were planning something. She was supposedly trying to pick up on a girl at work, Abigail, and started talking about that. Abigail got scared, went home, and told her mom. Her mom told the cops about it. The day that Melissa quit, she found out that everyone knew what she told Abigail and she ran out. She had supposedly been with them when they wrote in the journal with all of their friends and saw blueprints for a building. Melissa had said that the plan was for Eric and Dylan to die because they wanted to. She said that there were supposed to be about 4 others who will go in and do some shooting and leave before the cops got there. But she said it afterwards, so it might not be true. And we actually went over that extensively in the multiple shooter theory episode. Document 979, Nancy Lindsay. Nancy explained that on 4/20 she proceeded over to Johnson Lake, which is just to the west of Clement Park. I asked Nancy if she could recall what time she arrived at Johnson Lake. She told me that no later than 11 a.m. Nancy started walking around the lake, telling me that she had a headset radio on and she was listening to KHOW radio station. And it was 11:15 a.m. when the radio station reported that there were 2 gunmen on the roof at Columbine High School with grenades. Nancy told me she had just started to walk up the path, which was to the west of Columbine Hill, where she stopped in amazement over the news report. After stopping, she turned her radio off and told me that she heard the sound of 3 gunshots coming in the direction of Columbine High School. So the first shots were fired allegedly at 11:17. Huh. Supposedly the first media reports were at 11:30. So I don't know if anybody else can corroborate this, if they were listening to KHOW radio station. All right, now let's get even crazier. So, document 13,013. That's an ominous number. So these are notes from Meg Beck, manager of the Ascot Theater in Littleton. So April 17th, so this is 3 days prior, April 17th, I went to Celebrity Vintage Costume Shop at 1866 South Broadway to rent a costume. Heard the owner, Robert Letcher, talking to a couple different customers at different times, each asking him if they ever got on the internet. I heard him to tell one of them to watch TV next week, that there was something really big going to happen, apocalyptic, etc. This is document 13,013, referencing the owner of Celebrity Vintage Costume Shop telling different customers to watch TV next week. There's document 14,230. An Alameda High School student received anonymous information from students, also from administrators, that Redacted had prior knowledge of the Columbine shooting. Redacted allegedly made the comment this past week that something big was going to happen. I spoke with Redacted. He denied making such a statement, obviously. So apparently students and administrators at Alameda High School were saying that something big was going to happen. I mean, wow. I mean, we're just going through dozens and dozens of accounts clearly demonstrating prior knowledge. Another curiosity, this is straight from CNN. April 20th, 1999 started promisingly in Jefferson County. Early that morning, community leaders had gathered at the fairgrounds for the Good News Breakfast, which is held each year in honor of good works being performed throughout the county. Now, what level of coincidence is this? So this is the annual Good News Breakfast. I mean, if this is some kind of satanic occult operation, is this some kind of ironic inversion of good news? At one table, Jefferson County Administrator Ron Holliday, an interesting name, talked to Sheriff John P. Stone about their meeting scheduled that afternoon to discuss emergency management issues. Nearby sat two of the county commissioners, representatives from the school district, and other community leaders. The event gave them a chance to celebrate positive happenings and programs in the county. So the annual county Good News Breakfast is that morning. Miranda in the chat is asking, wasn't it planned for the 19th, though? I went over that in the early episodes. It may have originally been planned for the 19th. There are a lot of issues there. And there were there were events that did happen the 19th. So, yeah, there's a lot of weirdness regarding the dates. So here is a lost article. Let me see if I can get the archive here. This one is quite the doozy. Oh, wow. Here we go. I have the archive. So this is trueTV.com/library/crime/criminal_mind/psychology/evil3/3.html. You can look up the archive of this on Wayback Machine. This is by supposedly legitimate journalist Catherine Ramsland. Let me screenshot this, because a lot of goofs are probably going to have issues with this. Who's ready for one of the biggest mind shocks in this entire case? I don't think everybody's ready for this. This would explain quite a bit if this was actually true. I don't see a date here for the original publishing of the article, but as of 2009, this was still online. Hope everybody's sitting down for this. So, does everybody see this? The day before their rampage, they sent an email to the local police department declaring their plan for revenge. They blamed parents and teachers for turning their children into intolerant sheep and announced their own suicide. Let me read that again for the coincidence theorists. The day before their rampage, they sent an email to the local police department declaring their plan for revenge. They blamed parents and teachers for turning their children into intolerant sheep and announced their own suicide. So if this is true, you could see why the police would want to scrub all mention of this, because if they were officially warned by email, and there's all these rumors circulating, this would actually explain quite a bit, because that means anybody working at the police station that saw the email or were informed of it, it could spread from there. Then you could have, the police officers could tell their friends and family that have kids at Columbine they're not going to school that day. Wouldn't that be quite the mind shock? Very, very interesting, is it not? They're also, apparently, when they seized Eric Harris's computer and all of that information, supposedly there's a lot more on the websites that they never revealed. But we'll be going through that as well on future episodes. So there is a researcher here. I don't know the source of this. It was copy-pasted into a forum. I was told by a student of Columbine that she said one of my friends told me that her boyfriend sent an email to the school and Jefferson County to warn them. When I tried to ask her about it a couple more times, she did not want to discuss it. In fact, she said they never sent it, but she said everyone knew about it, but that did not believe it would happen. See, if this happened, then they would have also told the principal. So everybody would have known. So let's say they're not directly involved. Simply the fact that they were warned and did nothing. I mean, that's enough to want to sweep this under the rug, even if they weren't directly involved. I found more information here. Document 13,424 regarding Payne at King Soopers and the group of girls about the plans. So, April 20th, 99, Payne was shopping at King Soopers located at the corner of Columbine and Pierce Littleton, Colorado, when she became aware of the shooting incident at Columbine High between 12 and 12:30 p.m. As Payne was leaving the store, she noticed 4 or 5 young females who appeared to be high school students using a pay telephone. Payne asked one of the females about the incident. The female advised that while at the high school during the incident, she yelled out, "You idiots. What are you doing shooting up our school?" Another unidentified female student responded, "Shut up. Those are my friends you're talking about. They've been planning this for months." Document 13,424. Huh. I mean, this is kind of weird. I mean, it's so weird. Like, everything about this is weird. So Payne actually walked up to them while they were on the pay telephone, and one of the females said she yelled out, "You idiots, what are you doing shooting up our school?" Who would yell that out when there's 2 gunmen killing people? Are you really going to yell that out? Or are you going to run for your life or hide? I mean, I don't know. However, the other student next to her, this is at King Soopers, said, "Shut up, those are my friends you're talking about? They've been planning this for months." I mean, this entire account is weird. All these accounts are weird. So apparently, 11,000 crime scene photos have not been released. 1,200 videos, photos, and written documents, which does not include 450 pages of writings from Harris and Klebold, not released. That's curious. There are also, okay, on page 618 of FBI's new Columbine files, it says that there were 5,000 computer disks analyzed. What? Where? That's a lot of disks. I mean, is that just everything in totality relating to the case? But 5,000 is a lot. $5,000 is a lot. I mean, the people that watched it unfold live, I mean, they've been making reports on the internet forever about what they saw on that original news footage that has since never been rebroadcasted. Supposedly a trench-coated figure jumping over a fence into the neighborhood, NATO military trucks, a high-ranking military individual on scene, random guys in suits walking around with clipboards before the shooting started. I mean, several body bags being taken out of the north side of the school, which is curious because according to the official narrative, that didn't happen. There's also, according to ABC News, Eric Avram stated that there's 40 hours of tapes, which includes surveillance from inside the school and surveillance tapes from other areas, whatever that means. And there's also video diary. I don't know if that's the basement tapes. Few hours long. Including video 30 minutes prior to the shooting. So there's basement tapes footage 30 minutes before the shooting started. So, FEMA report page 5, there were security cameras, plural, in the administration area and the cafeteria. There's also evidence log from the Jeffco documents, document 9945, evidence tape from the north portion of administration offices. You know what's weird too? There's been so much speculation on whether or not there were cameras in the library. FBI report, page 1627, quote, Columbine had surveillance camera in library, but officials don't know if the system was on. Investigators acknowledged Thursday, April 23rd, that a video surveillance system is located in the library. On Friday, Jeffco Sheriff spokesman Steve Davis corrected a police statement from the previous day about security camera coverage at the school. Police now say there was no video camera in the library where the murders took place. See, that's kind of curious. So, a full 48 hours after the shooting, they're stating that there was a camera. Then it takes an additional 48 hours to say that there wasn't. Now, it is confirmed that there was a camera in the library hallway. That's never been debated. And the administration area, and the parking lot area, and the cafeteria. What's debated is whether or not there was a camera directly in the cafeteria. Now, certain students have said that there wasn't. I don't know. But it is kind of weird that it is, the day of, maybe they made mistakes. Now, 48 hours after the fact, that's not enough time to corroborate this, and in the official FBI report, it is stating that there was. but the system might not be on. Then, as of Thursday, there was confirmation. Then, I mean, it's just kind of weird. I mean, basically, the corrected statement is coming April 24th. They're stating there wasn't. I mean, if you're doing an investigation and most of the murders occurred in the library, that would be step one to verify whether or not there was footage in the library, right? So how come 2 to 3 days later they're saying that there was a system in the library? And then the fourth day they're saying, oops, we made a mistake. There actually wasn't a video camera directly in the library. That's just weird. It's really weird. Like, how do they not know and making this so many mistakes? So, yeah, I mean, just a lot of bizarre oddities here regarding just, I mean, we went over dozens and dozens of individuals here with supposed foreknowledge, including adults. I mean, it's just weird. We have FBI documents corroborating that there's some kind of online activity. Even a journalist claiming, I don't know where the information came from, that Harris and Klebold themselves sent an email to the police the day before. Yeah, I mean, this is crazy stuff. I mean, this is just really, really mind-shocking stuff. So, plenty more to come. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here with this tragic, tragic case. Hope everybody found another edition of the Mindshock podcast interesting and informative. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. You can also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.